when we recognize this injury, and we even heard it from Bella and even in the first panel, there's a lot of athletes that, try and hide it, and it's very hard to maybe spot it and recognize it. So how can we ensure that these athletes get removed from play, and what sort of communication strategies can we create so that everyone involved, including the parents and the coaches, understands how significant this is?
Absolutely. And that's a really good question. And it's something that's a benefit as an athletic therapist, because as an AT, we have access to a team and those athletes 12 months of the year. And at the end of the season, essentially what you'll see an AT do is we'll do a debrief. So we look at the season, we look at the protocols and the procedures and the strategies that worked, but then we also analyze the ones that didn't. We also take in any new evidence-based protocols that came in. This year we have a ton of them, and we start to implement them. And what we do with that information is that the preseason time, and Stephanie said this a few times in the first panel, where education is one of our biggest assets as clinicians. And so as an AT with a team, what we get to do is we get to bring the athletes, their parents, sometimes it's a billet family, the agents, the coaches, even the network that might be within your community. We bring them all in. And what we do is we do a preseason education presentation. And in that are non-negotiables. So I go up and I talk to my team and I explain basically what the pathway to care is going to look like, what the emergency action plan is going to look like. We're going to identify the person that's going to make those choices, which on my teams is me. And basically we're looking at doing, like, for example, families. My family does it. My daughter's here and she can attest to that. We'll do a fire prevention thing with our family, and we'll tell our kids how to get out of the house if the fire happens to be in certain parts of the house. So essentially that's what I'm doing with my team. And if an athlete was to take a hit in center ice, I go out, I'm taking the athlete off, I'm going to tap my head, and I'm going to teach my coaching staff what that means. So when I'm tapping my head and I'm removing this athlete, my coaches know, okay, Kim is suspecting a concussion. That means my doctor is coming down from the stands, and that coach now has the opportunity to make the changes he needs to on the bench. He knows that I am immediately taking this athlete off and they are not returning to the field of play. Those things are critical to teach in the preseason. So it basically mitigates any misunderstandings. It mitigates any confusion in what the process is and what the protocols are going to be. And from an athlete perspective, it drastically reduces anxiety and fear. They don't have to say, oh boy, I'm going to have to decide whether I go back or not. It's going to be like, no, Kim, this is one of Kim's non-negotiables. I'm off. The coaching staff, the medical staff, and everybody that's considered a stakeholder at the time also knows that I'm going to do an assessment in 24 hours. Whether the doctor and I can make that diagnosis or not, they know that we're going to check them again in 48 hours. So those non-negotiables are taught in the preseason. And that's, again, one of our most valuable assets as a clinician. The other thing I do with my teams is something that's considered consistent communication. So we do a big piece at the beginning, but then it's really, really important that every Sunday I send emails out to everybody, and they're very different emails. So what I send to my coach might be, okay, athlete A is heading into step 2, and this is what the week is going to look like. But to the athlete, I'm going to say Monday at 8 a.m., you're going to do the Buffalo Concussion Treadmill Test. And then depending on what zone you're able to work out in, this is what your week's going to look like. But then the information that I'm sending to maybe the parents or the billet parents, again, is completely different information. It may be, here's a list of pro-inflammatory foods that I'd rather your athlete not eat for this week. This is the type of supplement we would like to see them take, whether it's magnesium, omegas. And basically, everybody is consistently taught and communicated with every Sunday of every week. And again, back to the beginning, it basically reduces anxiety, fear. It's not trying to figure out who's responsible for what stage because Kim is, because that's a non-negotiable. And it also basically reduces any mistakes and anything that could happen. So the most important takeaway from this question for me and for me to share with you guys is early education on the process and the protocol is mandatory, and not faulting from that and not making changes for different people, and having everybody in that shareholder world understanding that. And then the consistent communication shows trends and patterns. We're all about trends and patterns. So when we recognize it, we know what the next stages are going to be. And again, we're mitigating the anxiety and obviously supporting better outcomes.